not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Hello and welcome to episode 48 of the Croydon Constitutionalist podcast, bringing classical liberalism to South London and beyond via our YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Dan Heaton and my partner in podcasting today is Mike Swadling, the co-founder of the Croydon Constitutionalists. Mike, how are you?
I'm all right, thanks, Dan. It's beginning to look like a lot like Christmas, although, as we've just discussed, not very much at either of our places. But yes, a year's coming to a close, and what a year it is to get rid of.
Indeed, we must look forward to the next year, to 2021, and hopefully a much better year. What have we got to discuss today?
So, regular updates on the world of COVID, an update on Brexit and where we're at, which of course could well change by the time you listen to us. An update on the culture war and just really what's going on and the encompassing thing that's happening in our lives in many ways. And of course, lots to bring you from our website.
So yes, COVID. There's a vaccine. By Jove, we've seen a vaccine actually being administered this week. Margaret was the first person to receive the vaccine, a lady living in Coventry. And did you notice, Mike, that the second person to receive the vaccine was a chap from Warwickshire called William Shakespeare, which was uncanny, let's say. It was such moving footage that it brought the health secretary almost to tears. Mike, I suppose it's good news. How do you feel about it?
It is good news. I mean, it's fantastic that many organisations and companies have come up with vaccines as quickly as they have. I must admit, I was somewhat sceptical that would be possible because it's not something we've done with coronaviruses in the past. But it does show what can be done and what can work. I think I do have a bit of scepticism about, frankly, the need for a vaccine for when death levels are at normal. I mean, it was very bad, but it was, as in past tense. That doesn't mean if you've got one, you wouldn't use it, and that's fine. It's probably being rushed through. It's probably fine. Not sure I'm going to be first in the queue, but then I'm never first in the queue for anything to do with the doctors if I can help it. So yeah, it's good news. More than anything, I think it's good news is because it means the government and governments around the world will fast run out of excuses to keep taking our freedoms if we've got a vaccine. Now, that doesn't mean for 1 minute I think they won't still keep taking our freedoms. It just means they've run out of excuses to do it.
Yeah, so the vaccine has been tested, but as you say, it's been put through very, very quickly, very, very quick approval for a vaccine. They normally take many years to come to fruition. In terms of side effects, apparently some people have had quite bad side effects, albeit they were already they were in hospital when the vaccine was administered. So it sounds as if people who have bad allergic reactions to something. So I'm assuming this is the sort of people that carry around EpiPens in case they come anywhere near a peanut. Those sort of people have been, it's been suggested that they shouldn't take the vaccine. But certainly if the vaccine is effective with the people that it's administered to, and of course it's important with this to remember that those people who've had the vaccine this week need to have it again or need to have a booster in 3 weeks' time before they have fully had the vaccine. So it's not a one-time thing, unfortunately, which will obviously delay the full rollout of things. But if it is effective, and it's been administered to, I think in this case, the first people were sort of 90-year-old people. So obviously they're gonna give it to old people firsthand, and probably NHS staff and people who work in care homes who were dealing with these people on a regular basis, and then sort of work their way down through people with an underlying condition, and then down through the age groups. Strikes me that at that rate, in a couple of months, you would actually have effectively, as I say, if it's effective in the individual, you will have immunity for those people who are, don't say, in the at-risk categories. So really, I don't see how they can continue to keep us under these restrictions, much past the end of January. But of course, as you say, once government's taken some powers, it seldom gives them back. And London's been in tier 2, of course, where we reside in Croydon. So pubs have been open, albeit subject to some somewhat confusing restrictions. But yeah, there's rumours, possibly unsubstantiated, I certainly hope so, that London will be going into tier 3 in a few days' time. Not really sure why, and I'm not really sure what the point with that would be, because a week later we'll be going into the national restrictions, which is some easing of restrictions ahead of Christmas. Mike, what have you made of the tier system this time round?
I mean, it all lockdowns, and we might come on to talk about this a bit, are a disaster. And they're a disaster for freedom, they're a disaster for the economy, they're a disaster for keeping other medical issues in check, and they're a disaster, frankly, just for the human spirit. And these tiers are bad. But hey, we were in lockdown a couple of weeks ago. At least we got into tier 2. At least we can go out and have a substantial meal or 6. But the idea that London needs to move, I don't know, Dan, you're in London more. Is it busy at the moment? Are there lots of people travelling around?
I'd say more than there was before the previous or before lockdown 2.0. I'd say definitely. Some places that had reopened ahead of lockdown 2 don't seem to have bothered to reopen. I think they've just decided to jack it in until the new year, perhaps, because they just don't think they're going to get sufficient trade. And of course, this time of year, many restaurants and taverns would be doing a great trade in with people having their Christmas celebrations, and of course they're just not going to get that in anywhere near the same numbers as normal. So I think they've just decided to jack it in until the new year. So as an example, my gym in central London, part of a chain, they told me last week that they're going to close. The fact they're closed now, they're not going to reopen until the new year, but they've said I can go and use another one of the gyms nearby. So they've obviously decided that they're just going to limit the number of buildings they're going to have open until the new year, because they're simply not getting the people coming back for the time being anyway. With a vaccine and what have you, and that may well change in the new year. Hopefully it will. But yeah, I mean, these all seem to be just rumours as far as I'm concerned. I've no real reason to believe that infection rates are going up, and anyway, infection rates don't necessarily mean deaths. And surely, and in actual fact, that the real concern should be deaths of people who are otherwise healthy, and below a, don't just an arbitrary age, but below a certain age. Ultimately, that would be the calculation you'd have to use to decide whether or not to have any restrictions, let alone the sort of lockdowns that we've had. But yeah, it's been a bit busier, but it's clearly just nowhere near the same as you would expect at this time of year.
And that just then leads me to think, so what's the benefit of going to tier 3? At the moment, some people might meet other people in places where they can have a substantial meal. Now, I know bubbles aren't allowed to mix or what have you, but I think that might happen. They will meet each other in each other's homes, where there is quite a lot of evidence that there's more transmission because people are more relaxed about how they go about things. So what's the benefit of going to tier 3 other than to control us? I this is control, it's not health. It seems to be more and more obviously the case. It's interesting, you say, the death rates aren't really up, the hospitalization rates aren't up. They are up for COVID, but they've gone down for flu. Now, either flu has packed up its bags and gone on vacation this year, or it's people who've got a bunch of things wrong with them, and the hospital staff are picking one to be the issue. I wouldn't be surprised. Unfortunately, we go to tier 3, but it does just feel like manipulation by the government. Nothing. In fact, as evidenced by Sir Patrick Vallance, the decision to impose the evening curfews, which was keeping people in an environment longer where there is alcohol, is likely to increase risk. It was all based on a hunch. It is just their desire to control us, not any science whatsoever.
Well, the lack of science and the lack of effectiveness of various restrictions has been proven large in Wales recently. Wales was the part of the country that followed religiously Keir Starmer's suggestion for a 2-week fire break or circuit breaker, or whatever the terminology was, a little while back. And the COVID rate did decrease during that period, but now it's shot back up. And Wales, and given that Wales has a very low density of population, so you wouldn't think there would be that many infections from person to person. The rates have gone right back up, and are now it's now the worst part of the country in terms of infection rates. So these things clearly don't work. It just creates misery. And even if they work, I suppose if you do a full-on lockdown, then you will restrict the transmission of conditions, like almost certainly, because people are not interacting anywhere near as much. But you're just putting off the inevitable, really. And we've seen that clearly in Wales. But Mike, at least we've got an impartial press. At least we've got a credible press that has been holding the government to account and really looking into the validity of these lockdown restrictions. I mean, Sky News, for example, they've been doing such a good job, haven't they, over the past year on all of this? Any news about Sky News this week, Mike?
Now let me have a little think. Oh yes. Now there was something, wasn't there? The wonderful and impartial and always fair-minded Kay Burley appears to have been caught out breaking COVID restrictions. Now, let's get the end bit in first. She appears to have been suspended from her job. She has been suspended from her job. It appears she may well even lose her job. I don't think that should happen. I don't think it's right that we go around firing people at, frankly, every opportunity, and when you have parlings and stuff like that. It's not the right way to do things. However, it's very hard to see how she can carry on, particularly at the moment, doing what she has been doing. And Sky News is a big organisation. I'm sure there's other things that can be done. When she was caught out having a party with people from outside her household until late at night at the Century Club, then going on to the Folly restaurant. I'm not really sure how that was open at the times that apparently they were in there. And then going on to a party in her own house in West London until the wee hours of the morning. All the sorts of things that she has been castigating, and Sky News have been castigating the government or anyone for daring to break any rule. She and her colleagues were doing it writ large. It is one rule for them, one rule for us, isn't it? We've seen this all the way through. It was Cummings, keeping within the rules, but only because the rules were so complex, none of us could understand them, that he could do something that we would never know how to do. Professor old Shag-a-lot, who put us into lockdown in the first place. Health ministers and advisors in Scotland and Wales have done this. And now the media, who are there shouting at us, telling us that we must follow the rules and the rules should be even harsher on us, just having no interest in them themselves. It's if ever there was an elite running this country that has contempt for the people, it's really becoming clear now, isn't it?
It is, and Kay Burley's not the only one to get caught out in this. Beth Rigby, who back in the springtime was giving Dominic Cummings both barrels. She's been suspended or has agreed to step away from the cameras for 3 months, and a similar thing's happened to one of their colleagues, Inzaman Rashid, a gentleman who is the sort of northern correspondent, I believe, for Sky, and who actually travelled all the way from Manchester to attend this 60th birthday party for Kay. Yeah, one rule for them and one rule for us, which of course was what they were suggesting about Dominic Cummings back in the spring themselves. Hot off the press or the internet, more likely, Kay Burley has been seen at Heathrow Airport. It appears she is jetting off to South Africa to spend some time at a game reserve owned by Richard Branson. So it's all right when you get suspended for your job if you can fly off to the other side of the world, isn't it? For just a little break. I mean, she's earned it, yeah.
That is quite breathtaking. Yeah, that's it. I saw an interview on this with Mike Graham, the talk radio host, and he made a point that one of these, and I can't remember which one it was, one of these places she was at, you only really go to be seen. It's not necessarily a place you go. It's a place you go because it's a place to be seen at, which rather makes you wonder about them. And this does underline to me something that I've always been suspicious of with all the polling says that people are massively in favour of lockdown, and that's ebbing away, but it's still a majority. There has been some more detailed polling that suggests that people are in favour of lockdown, but not necessarily following all the rules themselves. Although I suspect, both of us and people listening do know people who are really rigidly following the rules. But I think there's a massive clump of those people that are in favour of lockdown and are saying that in polling or broadcasting it on the TV, that when it comes to their own choices and their own life are absolutely not following the rules. Now, I'm not a hypocrite. I don't let the tyrant tell me what to do. I'm doing what I want. Now, obviously, I can't go into a business that's shut, but I'm going to follow the rules I see fit. But these people are absolute hypocrites about it. And when that's private individuals, that's one thing. When it's the media, it is something else, or indeed the political class that seems to be doing it.
Moving on, if we may, from COVID, and hopefully looking to a bright future, starting in the new year. Brexit rumbles on. It's getting to the point now where it is a deal or no deal time, as the transition period comes to an end on the 31st of December. Still no deal in sight. Still seems to be lots of negotiating tactics going on. Still arguments about the level playing field provisions. The French still demanding access to our fishing waters, and another one now. The EU saying, well, if you want a trade deal, if we change the rules, you have to change your rules as well, or so-called auto alignment. And Mike, what have you made of the latest shenanigans?
So in preparing for this, I'm obviously sort of start to try and work out where we're actually at, and almost immediately decide there's no possible way of doing that, and I'll take what I think is roughly the case rather than anything I can necessarily substantiate, because I can't substantiate anything. There was a great story during the week, and I say great because it encapsulates what the EU are. As part of the Boris and meeting with von der Leyen, I'm sure I've butchered the name there, and I'm quoting from Guido here. boldly, in the event of no deal, the EU wants reciprocal rights for a year, meaning European boats could continue fishing in Britain's waters. So in the event that they won't give us our sovereign territory, they won't sign a free trade deal, which includes us having our sovereign territory over the water. They're saying, well, in the event that you won't do that, just give us the water. It's like, what a bunch of clowns these people are. I don't know why we're negotiating. I don't know why we've been negotiating with them. At any point, they've demanded to control us at the point we're leaving. When they first did that, we should have got up and walked away and said, don't be a bunch of fools. When you want to be serious, give us a call. And things, I think things would have gone very differently. What is worrying me in terms of these announcements and where we've moved, Michael Gove agreed that there was a controversial clauses in the internal markets bill would be removed, which gave us a lot of control over the withdrawal agreement. If to do things that we needed to, if the EU tries to punish us in any way. They've been withdrawn from what I can see there then. Whatever happens, the EU still has rather a lot of control over what we can and can't do in Northern Ireland. That's no sort of Brexit I voted for. I don't know about you, Dan.
Well, yes, on the face of it, I think what I believe they're saying has been agreed is essentially a side agreement which can be used in the event of a no deal scenario, which would govern effectively an interpretation of what the procedures will be in terms of the EU's influence or otherwise in Northern Ireland. So Michael Gove would argue they've agreed that they're not going to stop goods, particularly foodstuffs, going from, say, Scotland to Northern Ireland or back the other way. What we haven't seen as yet is the text of that agreement. But in light of that agreement, that's why they're saying they will be removing the international law breaking clauses from the internal market bill. We'll have to see what's in that agreement, and we'll have to see what people like the European Research Group think of it. I'm sure they'll do their homework on it and raise any concerns that they may have about it. So it could be that's okay, but we will just have to see what's made of it. We know that if there's any ambiguity, we know which way the EU is going to try to interpret things, and that's always the concern, because there's just such a lack of trust between ourselves and the European bodies, really.
And here's the broader point: if we're being asked to sign an agreement, or we're having to ask someone to sign an agreement to allow us to send goods from one part of our country to another part of our country, we need to fundamentally change that decision, because anyone that tries to block us from sending goods from one part of our country to another part of our country should be met with the Royal Marines. This isn't up for debate. This isn't up for agreement. It's just something we're going to do. And if that needs a law to pass to do it, then it needs a law to pass to do it. And if the Lords won't pass that law, create 800 Lords tomorrow, get that law passed. It absolutely is not an acceptable position that we need to ask their permission to do that. It's worrying, even a get Brexit government doesn't quite see that, but we are where we are.
We are indeed. However, there is some good news, because there are trade deals that have in fact been done just in the past couple of weeks. We've got a new trade deal with Singapore and Canada, and indeed others are being announced almost daily. So it's good to see one more of Project Fair's suggestions falling apart again. Good news for Britain's future. 57
countries, 193 billion pounds worth of trade. It is fantastic news. There's a really lot of good stuff going on here from Liz Truss and that department. I went down her Twitter timeline, which I think is the easiest way now to find out what's going on in the world of free trade. And as you mentioned, this past week, so this is from the 5th to the 11th of December, Vietnam, Singapore, Canada, Kenya, Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Egypt are countries we have signed free trade deals or continuity trade deals, but trade deals of one sort or another with. That's brilliant. That's a lot, and that's a lot of the growing world economy. Just one of them, Kenya, a country that interests me because it's one of these the untold story of the past 20 years, and will, I'm sure, feature heavily in the history books of the future, is the explosion in GDP and wealth in Africa. Africa's really become, booming economies, and it's overshadowed because of how India and China, which have been growing for many years before, have boomed, and China's particularly their position in the world. But Africa is motoring, and Kenya, in that time, the UK from 2020 to the beginning of the year, so pre-lockdowns, the UK economy had basically gone up 90% in size, grown, over that 20-year period. Kenya, in that same period's GDP, has gone up over sevenfold from the start of the century, 12.7 billion to over 87 billion now. That's a huge exponential growth. Now, that's still very small compared to the European economies, but that pace of growth, and it's a chart that just goes up and up and up, and that's who you want to be trading with. That's the future. The past is Germany and Italy and Spain, big economies, very successful economies, but you're not going to be creating great new futures out of your deals with them because like us, they are fairly stable countries. We need to be getting into Africa, Egypt, Kenya, the fast-growing economies of the East, like Singapore and Vietnam. These really couldn't be more pleased to see that news.
Some people don't necessarily agree with our level of optimism, though, do they, Mike? The Labour Party, for example, seems to be still confused as to what its Brexit policy should be. Seems to be some dissension within the ranks. Some MPs saying they're not going to vote for anything. Keir Starmer has apparently suggested that they'll pretty much vote for any deal. That's actually, if one is agreed, they'll pretty much vote for it. But Lisa Nandy, the shadow foreign secretary's got herself in a bit of confusion when it comes to workers' rights.
Lisa Nandy, it should be remembered, is the one member of the Labour sort of top team who's not bat excrement crazy when it comes to Brexit. She's the one saying we, as in the Labour Party, need to be speaking to northern towns and understanding people's issues and coming to terms with Brexit. She's the one that says we need to actually reach out to the working class. And she's the one that says, and I quote, "It is intolerable that if the EU decides they want to up the pay conditions and working standards of those precise people who have kept this country going during the pandemic, that we shouldn't be beholden to that. Sorry. So what she is saying, that if the EU changes their working conditions law, we should be obliged to follow suit. Now, what part of sovereignty don't you understand? Maybe we want to increase our rules quicker than them. Maybe we want to go slower. Maybe we want different rules in different parts of the country because we've got devolved assemblies. What is she playing at? What she's saying is she wants us to be a vassal state. Good luck taking that to the red wall seats come the next election.
Yeah, I mean, it's a complete lack of understanding of sovereignty. But you know what? It starts to sound a bit like Labour's position by about the mid-1980s. When they moved away from they were going to withdraw. Had they won the 1983 general election, they had a policy of withdrawal from the then European Economic Community. They lost that election very badly, and then they changed their tune. But what really changed their tune was when Jacques Delors spoke at the Labour Party conference. And they suddenly twigged that they might be able to get a lot of socialist policies imposed upon the country without actually ever winning an election. because they don't have enough confidence in themselves to put the case for workers' rights, etc., all of those touchy-feely labor things, because they don't think that they'll win. That is a complete lack of understanding of sovereignty. And actually, it's just a lack of confidence in yourself and your own arguments, really.
Yes, if you can't make the case for labour laws with the people of Labour in this country, when that is your brand name, your party name, and there are areas of this country that, since all the working class got the vote, have only really ever voted Labour, then maybe you need to change your policies and your messaging a bit. Assuming that someone else will do it for you doesn't really feel like a smart way forward.
Well, moving on to another one of the hot topics at the moment, and the culture wars. We've had all kinds of issues around statues over the summer, and BLM protests, and of course, one of the things that we've seen has been professional sports people taking a knee before the kickoffs of football and rugby matches. Well, recently, some football spectators were allowed back into ground, very small numbers, as a percentage of the capacity, a couple of thousand, and one of those occasions was a Millwall football match, and the players knelt before kickoff in solidarity with Black Lives Matters, and they didn't receive the warmest of welcomes from their own fans. Not everybody's supportive of the Millwall fans, but Mike, I know this is an issue that you've been talking about and thinking about during the time that you yourself have been unable to make use of your Crystal Palace season ticket. What have you made of what went on and the reaction to it?
It's like no one involved in professional football has ever been to a pub to watch a football game. Because if they had been to a pub in this time period that they have been open, and the games have been on the telly in them, they would know that there is more than a little discontent and muttering among people when at the start of the game people take the knee for the organisation Black Lives Matter. And I say the organisation Black Lives Matter because, yes, it is an important phrase and campaign, but it has moved beyond that. When you have a ritual that you're following, there's something somewhat more organised about that. They have literally an organisation called Black Lives Matter has now literally registered to be a political party. So this is a political gesture. Even if it wasn't necessarily meant like that, it is. I think it's really hard to see it's not that. It gets a reaction in the pubs. Why are you doing it when the fans are back in the ground? You must have been expecting a reaction. They must have been trying to provoke a reaction, or they have such little care or closeness to the people that actually go to football that they've no idea who we are. Interestingly, it wasn't just at Millwall. It was at Colchester. It was at West Ham. I've seen it reported. I suspect it may well have been at other places. The reaction afterwards seems to have got it right. They did some holding arms thing. Yeah, great. That seemed to work. There was no booing, and that's there's got to be a way forward. I, like many people, go to football as an escape, as a release. Professional sports operate like that. And it's interesting. The NBA in America, which of course is a, I guess it's fair to say, it's predominantly black athletes, is a really has banned a lot of these political gestures at their grounds because it was a real turn off to fans. I think that will be true here. People go to sports to release. They don't go to sports to be lectured. And a huge misstep that anyone thought this was a good idea once the fans, frankly before, but certainly once the fans were back in the ground.
Absolutely. Going to watch your professional sports team, whatever the sport, or even professional, but certainly professional, and where people are being paid good money, you want to see them do what they do best, which is doing their sporting activities. You do not want politics or anything like that to be involved in it. You are going there to be entertained. You've hope your team wins, but you may well come away disappointed with the result. But nonetheless, it's you're getting away from your normal day-to-day life for a couple of hours, and you're paying handsomely for it, and they're being paid handsomely for it. So they should just crack on and play football, really.
No, it's just to underline these facts here. When the Premier League is massively multi-ethnic, and these players are supported by these fans. We cheer their names. We sing songs about them, and vote them as Player of the Year, and of all creeds and colours. And the idea that there's, as has been written about, that this is some sort of racist backlash. No, it's just, don't lecture us. Let us come at football and relax. And particularly after this year, people need to be able to do that. Don't harp on every opportunity. It's football's shot itself in the foot. But hopefully, it's learned its lesson.
Well, it's not just football that's being politicized. Even street names are now being politicized. Birmingham, for example, is Birmingham City Council are looking to change the name of some of their roads. They're looking to have roads called Equality Road, Diversity Grove, Destiny Road, and Inspire Avenue, which actually sounds quite good, actually. Inspire Avenue. Why? Who knows? They've decided that certain roads are named after people who may have some point, I don't know, been near a Jamaica ginger cake or something of this nature, and they're just they're going after them as if it's it's just it's virtue signaling, but that's going to cost the taxpayers of Birmingham. On the other hand, to be fair, we do have a counterpoint to this, where the mayor of the Tees Valley is looking to replace some place names. I think the one in particular that he's looking to do something about, he's looking to take a place and revert it to Trafalgar Street or something like that. Yes, Trafalgar Street. This is in Stockton, I believe, up in the northeast. That the street used to be called Trafalgar Street, but as more recently, from 1990s onwards, has been called, and if you can believe this, it was called Council of Europe Boulevard.
It's shocking, isn't it? I think he's actually, something I read, they were thinking of turning it to a name of Stanley Hollis, who's a local D-Day hero. But either, Trafalgar Street. Yeah, Council of Europe Boulevard is quite amazing. There's a great letter there that quotes that there is or ever was any not believing that there is or ever was any sympathy for the name change from local people, and that's the original change to Council of Europe Boulevard. Yeah, quite an amazing name. The Birmingham names, they're just awful, aren't they? At least if you're going to rename something, have a reason behind it. Have a sense of purpose. Not these. Don't make it those god awful corporate images with a inspiring picture and an inspiring word bit beneath them. They are generally seen as being mockable. Why would you want to live in a mockable road?
Indeed. Well, people that inspire us often receive honours from Her Majesty. In particular, Order of the British Empire, British Empire Medal, Commander of the British Empire, and such like. Well, the Labour Party's Shadow Education Secretary, Kate Green, has decided that she doesn't like these things, and that any references to empire must go. Like she's got nothing else to talk about. She's the Shadow Education Secretary, and she's talking. See in this post here on the BBC, she's talking about decolonizing the curriculum. I mean, there's no suggestion that we need to help people, help kids to better themselves, or let's look at what the situation is in terms of kids that may have regressed in their learning during the original lockdown, because a number of schools, frankly, didn't really do that much in terms of virtual learning, and there's problems around that. No, seems that our only interest is in decolonizing the curriculum. Not talking at all to the sort of people, as far as I'm concerned, that the Labour Party would need to win back in order to win a general election.
You're absolutely right there. In the Venn diagram of kind of people that have voted for you, people that won't vote for you, people that you need to win over, what's the constituency that you're going after when you get rid of the word empire in OBE and MBE and the like? I could maybe imagine a constituency if you were to just get rid of the awards in totality. I'm not sure there's much of a constituency there, but maybe. But the idea that this somehow offends people, I mean, who's it offended? Name 6. Who are these 6 people? And really, how much do they care? How offended are they? What's it changing? Absolute nonsense. These are historic awards that we give. They have become more democratized over time, so you can nominate people. It's much more common that people have got them. So I'm on a governing body with 2 people that have got I think 1 O and 1 MBE, and that's becomes a thing. You're more likely to meet people locally who have got these things. This, if you're offended by it, you don't have to take it. There's something insipid in this, and it goes with the Labour Party. It starts when we look at COVID, and there's kind of an elite that frankly, thinks that we should live under a different rule to us. You go through to the Labour Party policy on the EU, and they don't believe that this nation should be trusted with its own sovereignty. And here you say, here's a Labour Party that doesn't believe that any of our historic medals or awards or awards for work in our country should be awarded, and our history is offensive. They just don't like us.
They simply they do not like the country, and they want to change the people. Of course, it's funny because, of course, the country doesn't like them. So
it's reciprocal.
Exactly. So that's lovely, isn't it? But whilst all this sort of nonsense has been going on, the Conservative Party has been sadly largely silent on matters. There's been 1 or 2 voices, but the government in particular hasn't taken anywhere near as strong a stance on these matters as many of us would like. There are, of course, now some alternative parties framing themselves as being on the anti-woke side of things. Whether any of them are able to gain any electoral traction as a result of what's been going on, time will tell. Mike, what have you made of the credentials of some of these anti-woke parties that are out there?
Yeah, and it should be noted that we have Labour that doesn't like Labour, as you just talked about. We all know the Liberal Democrats are neither Liberal or Democratic, and the Conservatives don't seem to be conserving anything. They've got an 80-seat majority. I mean, this is their chance to do that, and they're not doing it. So we have seen this rise of other parties. The monster in the room, the one that looks like it could do something, if only Nigel can be bothered, is of course Reform, which is what the name they're trying to register for the Brexit Party. Now, I'm just not sure, and I don't know what your thoughts are, Dan, on whether Nigel Farage is really committed to this cause. He's come to it late, having spent, frankly, sort of stopped after Brexit, and I don't blame him for that. He's been a campaigner for many years, but I'm not sure at the level of commitment. I'm also not sure the party is interested in having a grassroots movement, and that is critical if you want to actually have a party up and running for a period of time. Just sort of going through a few others. Reclaim, it's Lawrence Fox's party. Lawrence has apparently got a lot of money. He's clearly got a lot of publicity, and I think he's attracted a number of people from the Brexit Party, as were ex-candidates, to get involved and help. So I think they're interesting, and they are definitely committed to local elections and local parties. So that bodes well for them. Heritage Party, from friend of the show, David Curtin. He's running for Mayor of London and also on a London list system. I'm very much hope he gets returned, and a really good, a socially conservative party, but economically liberal. But the social conservatism, I think, is generally not sort of legally enforced, which to me is quite a critical point. Some really good policies, well worth looking at. And certainly, they have someone elected today, and that's a big difference. Another friend of the show, Chris Mendes, runs the Foundation Party, and they're mainly based out of Kent, but they're trying to grow, and again, a local party focused on a lot of local issues. And then we've got to the left more the SDP and the Social Democratic Party, the Christian People's Alliance we've dealt with, and there are lots and lots, not to the left, but lots and lots of libertarian parties. So sorry, there's a lot of detail in that. I guess the ones that jump out, I like the look of the SDP for people on the left. It's not my politics, but I think they've got a lot of high profile supporters, and they're just, they're an old Labour that kind of still believed in Britain, although they're not that left wing. I think that's good. And I definitely hope David does well in London, but I think Reform and Reclaim have got, apart from far too close a name, have definitely got some money and prestige behind them. It'll be interesting to see where they go. Dan, what are your thoughts on these?
No, I share quite a lot of your thinking on that. It's going to be interesting to see if basically quite a few of these parties end up taking votes off each other and end up getting nowhere. I think at this time, when so many of our liberties have been restricted so heavily during because of the lockdown processes, you'd have thought the Libertarian Party would be doing better, but as we know, it's failed miserably to take advantage of this series of events, and has had a huge schism. So I don't particularly see them doing well. You've got and this, of course, it's not a political party, but you have the independent libertarians who will kind of encouraging libertarian-minded people to stand effectively as independents in local elections. So it'll be interesting to see if any of those do well in those local elections, because of course they might be able to run a very personal campaign in a very small area. That could work. But in terms of any regional or national breakthrough, you've got to get the publicity. You say the SDP does have a few high-profile supporters, but it really doesn't get the publicity generally that they would need to make a serious breakthrough. I'm not so sure that they have the people on the ground in many parts of the country to be able to do the door knocking and the leafleting or what have you. In that respect, whether David Curtin can retain his seat on the GLA via the London list, that'll be interesting to see. I think again where he I think there is definitely a market there for what he is saying in London, but whether or not again you get a certain level of cannibalization, because perhaps you end up with the Christian Party, Christian Party's alliance will be perhaps standing a list of candidates. There might be some libertarian candidates there, and they all take votes off each other, and they end up with none of them getting through. And I think that will be a shame, not just because David is a friend of the podcast, on that sort of personal level, but it would be a shame if somebody coming from that political perspective doesn't end up on the GLA, because the GLA could end up just being full of the wokest of the woke,
Yeah.
if you like. I can't think of any other expression.
Full of woke parties.
Just entirely woke. A very London centric, understandably in this context, Conservative Party, an extremely London centric, metropolitan elite version of the Labour Party. And I don't know, probably one or two Green candidates might well get elected. So it's always good to have some, there's a real opposition that we've seen from the likes of Peter Whittle, who won't be standing again, and from David himself when they've got the opportunity to question Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, who's obviously not doing too great a job at the moment, but it's good to see him getting some actual questioning every so often. So we'll have to see. But interesting times, and if any of them are prepared to work with each other, perhaps in some sort of pact, like the older. Well, funnily enough, I'm sure the SDP don't want to get into any pacts, come think of it, because it didn't work very well from last time, did it? But
No.
Perhaps some of the other parties could perhaps do some sort of formal or informal arrangements to try to make sure that there is some representation of non-woke people on some of these councils and assemblies, because it's very important that there's someone talking sense on them.
Well, in May, as things stand, there's 2 years worth of local elections coming up. In London, there's a limit to what you can do in terms of GLA elections, because if they all run a list, they'll all be on the list. If they all run for mayor, they'll all be running for mayor. But in the local elections outside of London, it will be good to see, and we will hope we can see a situation, or I certainly hope we see a situation whereby if a town, and I don't know what's running in Crawley, but I'll call it Crawley because it's somewhere nearby, we all know. There are local elections, and I just hope we don't have sort of Reform, Reclaim, SDP, Heritage, and anyone else all running in, say, Crawley North Ward, rather than running in kind of one each in Crawley North, South, East, and West. Because if they all run in Crawley North Ward, which in essence that guarantees the Labour or Conservative win, if they run around them, there is a good chance that someone in those areas can actually put forward a new positive set of ideas, you hope that kind of local collaboration is being thought about. I'm not sure that it is, because I'm not sure these people know each other, but otherwise the parties of liberty really just take each other out and don't take on those that seem to want to lock us up.
Well, Mike, we've got a few interesting pieces on our website that people might be interested in reading.
We've a bumper set of articles on our website recently. So first up is a new article from Josh Ashcroft, Market Environmentalism, Saving the Environment with Economics. So it's all about how the market can help the environment. Really good article, long, but goes through a lot of things. Just a note, if you like, that to me sums it up. As we get richer, we place a higher value on this good and are more willing and able to keep it clean. So humans, as their income increases, have a better environment overall. Earlier this week, I was interviewed by Sputnik Radio, talking about the Brexit deal, no deal, and what would happen to Boris if he failed to protect British sovereignty. I don't see it being a good end. You can have a listen to the recording there. That's up on our website, and a link to it. Croydon Council has again been in the news, as we know. Harry Fon, again, friend of the show, has from the Taxpayers Alliance, has written for Conservative Home, and I believe he will be writing quite regularly for them. So keep a lookout on that. He's written about how to avoid the fate of Croydon Council. So just pausing there for a moment there. There's an article on how to avoid the fate of being where we live, or certainly maybe not all our listeners, but certainly us too. That's not a great show for Croydon. But there we go. He makes the point that between 1997 and 2010, before the cuts, Croydon Council raised rates 13 out of 14 years, leaving it with the 7th most expensive council tax in London. That's Labour and Conservative councils. You put them in power. They've got different coloured rosettes on, but but they still left us much worse council tax position and raising rates at every opportunity. Have a read of Harry's article, excellent as you would expect from him. I gave a speech at a local debating society. We debated the motion why it will take more than a year to get back to normal. Now, as a nature of a debate, you could find yourself arguing either side. So, you know, if the toss of the coin had gone differently, I might have argued, well, we'll be back to normal next year. But it's a good local friendly society here in Croydon. But have a look at the article. It's really about some of the concerns I've seen with lockdown and how the economy's changed and how our liberties being taken has changed. I'll make the quote here, one of my favourite bits of my own speech, if I may say so. If you believe these freedoms, all these freedoms will be back with us and life will return to normal in a year from now, I have a bridge to sell you. Only under the current law, I'm not allowed to trade. And then lastly, and talking about the SDP, as we were, Ian Woodley, the SDP organiser in Surrey, we interviewed. He's actually spent many years growing up in Croydon as a Crystal Palace fan, so clearly a good man. Hopefully we'll hear more from him in the future. But have a read of his interview about what the SDP are doing in Surrey. He made a comment in here. So Brexit was a fantastic reminder of this. Forgetting the EU for a minute, it was the British people saying, "Oi, that is not what we want." That, however, was the start of a bigger fight to defend democracy. Not finished, as we have found out, and very true that it's not yet finished. So, yeah, lots on the website. Have a look and have a read and give us your feedback.
Well, if you would like to write for the website or have any stories you would like us to cover, please do contact us via the Twitter at CroydonConst, via our Facebook page, via our website, croydonconstitutionalist.uk, or via our email, croydonconstitutionalist@gmail.com. Well, do please subscribe to the podcast and the pubcast. I do hope that we can do a pubcast again soon. Do please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do please like, share, and leave a review. It's always good to get feedback, and it helps others to find the podcast. Well, thank you guys for listening and making us the 183rd most popular political podcast in the UK. Thanks, Mike, for joining me today. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Stay safe, everybody.